Hello, Math 11 students. Um, in this video, I will talk about your practice test for Unit 8, and you should work on your own on the questions, except for ignore the question 4, 5, and 6. Those are and 7. Those related to the TVM solver. If in our classroom, I will show you how to do it on the roughing calculator in this roughing calculator, but because it's an online lesson, so you don't have a roughing calculator in front of you. So I will just ask you to skip the question 4, 5, and 6, and 7. Those questions related to the roughing calculator, and using the program which is called a TVM, and like any software program, is very easy for you to just enter the number on the calculator and press the enter, and then you get the solution. However, you still have to learn the basic concept. So when you do your calculator, you use it, you know what does that mean. Otherwise, you just enter the number with make no sense, right? However, we will go through this without the calculator. Now, I suggest that you will do on the question from 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10. And these questions are related to a simple interest, which is it's very easy to remember, and for sure that it's less complicated. And the formula everybody know, you find the interest equal principal P time with the rate, time with the times of investment or borrowing the money, right? So the simple interest will be skipped from this video because you can do it on your own. You can review on your own, and I will just review for you how to use the formula of the compound interest in this video. Also, I will go through with you question 11, 12, and 14. 3 questions. So let's review the formula first. So our formula for compound interest, remember we're talking about compound interest. And you have to know compound interest is totally different from simple interest. The concept is you earn the interest on the top of the original principal changing from one to another, right? Period. So the simple interest is only earn the same interest for first year or second year or third year. They earn the same amount of interest. So let's say if you put in $1,000 in the bank and you earn an interest of $20, let's say $200 a year, then the second year you will earn the same interest of $200. The third year you earn the same interest of $200. On what you do is you use 200, you time with 3, so you get 600. The same like you add 200, add 200, add 200. And so in 3 years you earn the whole total interest of $600. But then if the question asks you to find the total amount you get at the end, including the principal, then you use the interest amount in total year of 3 years, 600. You add to the total, if you invest 1,000, so you ended up with $1,600 in total after 3 years. That is simple interest. So now, what is the difference for compound interest? Compound interest is, let's say the first year you earn 1,200. Then the amount you calculate the interest will base on not a 1,000 anymore, like the beginning, the principal, but it based on the new principal, which is 1,200. And then you add it up, you ended up in, you earn like maybe more than simple interest a little bit. Maybe on the second year, you get the principal increasing, become $1,250. Then you will calculate the next interest in the third year based on the previous year, which is $1,250, or whatever it is, right? Instead of just based on the same original principal. So the only difference is compound interest earn the interest on the top of each other, which is growth. It will make your money growth more and more than the simple interest. And also your interest earning is also depends on the rate of interest, depend on simple or compounds, and how many, what types of compounds. Is that a semi-annual compound or yearly compound or quarterly compound or monthly compound, right? So it affects by all the factors like that, not just the rate, right? And not just the type of compound, annual compound. It might be like semi-annual compound, maybe monthly compounded, right? So therefore, in the topic of compound interest, it's more complicated. But the basic formula, let's talk about the basic formula. So if basic formula will calculate FV equal PV time with 1, adding with the rate and divided by n, okay? And then on the top, you power with the time t. This time t can be 1 year, 2 year, or 1 month or 2 months or whatever, right? But remember, if your compound is semi-annually, so you divide the n here equal 2, because there are 2 periods in 1 year, right? So the n here equal 2. Then whatever the n down here, you will tie the period, the amount of total period, based on the same with, if you have 1 year, you time with 2 period. If it's semi-annually, so you have 2 period here. If it's a quarter compounded, then you multiply this n with 4. The same way you divide the rate with number 4. So your annually, if it's quarter, will be divided by 4, right? The rate for the whole year will divide by 4. Then the amount of period in here will based on the total years, t, but also have to time back with the n, the period here. If it's 4, so then the n here equal 4. If it's 2, then the n here equal 2. So it depends on the types of whether it is a semi-annually. So in formula, in this formula, you should know they are the same for 4 case, which is semi-annually. Semi-annually, then this rate will be divided by 2, and the period will be t times with 2 on the top here, right? That's the case. Now, number 2, we're talking about quarterly. Quarterly, then the rate R here will divide it by 4, because the R here is represent 1 year interest rate. And 1 year have 4 periods, so you divide by 4 if it is quarterly. And the T on the top here have to time back with number 4 to get the total periods of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, whatever it is. So if it is 3 years, then 3 times 4 equals 12 periods. Okay. Number 3, we're talking about monthly, compounded monthly. So all of this is compound, okay? So compounded, semi-annually, compounded quarterly, compounded monthly. So if it compounded monthly, the rate R will divide by 12, annual year will divide by 12 months, and the time will multiply back with 12 to get the total periods, okay? And then we also have a daily as well. Daily, then the rate of daily will be R divided by 365 days, and the time here will multiply back with 365. So these are the thing about the compounded interest you have to keep in mind when you deal with compound interest. So you got to read the question to see if the question asks you to find the future value for a principal, which is we also call a present value, right? And present value, like the principal, is original amount at the beginning, which is the present value, PV in here. And the PV here, this is the PV, the present value, the same like the principal. And you calculate the future value based on, at the beginning, how much you invest in there, multiply with 1, adding with the interest rate. And if the your interest rate is compounded semi-annually, you got to divide by 2. The n here substitute by 2. This is a general form, but depend on situation. You substitute for the n here. So if it is semi-annually, the n here equal 2 here. So you divide rate, divide by 2, period, in 1 year. And on the top, the power here, if it's 2 years, then 2 times with 2, which is 4 periods for 2 years. If it is 3, then 3 times with 2, which is 6 periods in 3 years. So the T here is the time of investment, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It depends on. The 2 is the semi-annually, 2 periods in 1 year. Quarterly is 4 periods in 1 year, right? And monthly, everybody know that you have 12 months a year, per year. So you divide the rate by the 12 months if you're talking about compounded monthly. And the top here, you have to multiply by the 12 as well to get the total period in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, depend on the question. And that's why each question are different. Sometimes they ask you to calculate the future value in 1 year, which is simple, but sometimes they may ask you 2 years and compound it semi-annually, or ask you to find the future value in 5 years and compound it quarterly. So each term in here, you have to apply the formula accordingly, okay? And sometimes they don't just ask you to find the future value on the times. They might give you the future value in the question and ask you to find the present value, right? Instead, they don't just ask you a future value. If they ask you just the future value, then it's a straightforward question. You just follow this formula, plug in the number and figure it out forward, right? But sometimes if they ask you to find the present value, they give you the future value, then you have to solve this equation for the present value. And sometimes they might not ask you the present value or future value. They might just ask you the interest rate. And sometimes they may ask you the time. They say how long for you to invest $1,000 in the bank with the rate 4% or something, they give it to you already. And to gain up to 5,000, if you invest 1,000 in there. So how long does it take you? So they may ask you about the times or the rate, or the present value, which is principal, or the future value. So as long as you follow this formula and you plug in the number, right, and you solve for one unknown, if they ask you a future value, they have to give you all of this information to find one unknown as the future value. If the question asks you about present value, the principal, then they have to give you the future value, and they have to give you the information about the rate, and they have to tell you the time is in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and they have to ask you if they want you to find the present value based on compounded semi-annually, or quarterly, or monthly. Then this is the chain rule formula. You substitute in, but you will have to also select whatever here, the rate you have to divide by 2 for semi-annually, or you have to divide by 4, or you have to divide by 12. It depends on the question. And that's why I'm marking your assignment in on grades from grade 7 to grade 11 as well. I figure out that you guys very, like most of you, like assuming the question asked you in the same pattern, never change. And assuming the question asks you through just one thing, like a future value, on the times. And you assuming that if you do compound it semi-annually, then the next question you will base on the same thing, which is compounded semi-annually. But you not realize that the next question might not ask you the same thing semi-annually, but they ask you in quarterly, or they ask you in monthly. And I think that the reason you miss information because you don't read the question carefully. You just assume that I did this is the way I did in the first question, this is the way I do in the second question, on the way down. But you don't read the question to see how it's changing, how the information is changed, and how the question is changed. So sometimes I ask you to highlight the data given and take a short note about the data given before you do the word problem. It means you take the short note, you say, okay, the data given to you, n equal this, r equal this, principal equal this. Because I want you to realize that none of the question design are the same, and you have to know the information. And by doing that, by taking the short note and write down what rate is, what future value is, if it's given, and what the question asks for. Do they ask for present value, or do they ask for future value? By taking the short notes like that, you will not assume one the same like the other. Because you write it down, then you should know how it's changing, right? And you should know what the question asks for. So I keep repeating the way you do the word problem. You have to write out in details what is given, what data is given. Do they give you a future value, or do they give you a present value? Do they give you the rate, or do they give you the year only, or whatever, right? So I keep asking you, but I'm very disappointed that, to be honest with you, that most students don't follow the way I told them. Whether they read it more carefully, I don't know, but the way they answer the question, I can see that they don't read the question. And at this level, Math 11, you don't just read about the math. You don't just read this. When you go to college, there's thousands of books for you to read. Ton of, regardless whatever you take. Do you take biology or do you take chemistry? There are tremendous amount of reading. And if you don't train yourself in high school to read carefully, to improve your skill of reading, because reading is another skill. You read fast or you read slow. Like I myself, reading English, of course, is slower than I read my own language. But at least I have enough knowledge to communicate with you and to read the information and to explain it to you well. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to end the lecture here. What I want you to do is write down this formula and frame it, highlight it, whatever. And when you write down, you can also write a little note beside it. You say on the top, when you write the formula, you put the arrow, you say this is future value. Put the arrow, you say this is present value. And R, you say rate. T, you say time. N is the number period. And then you can make this as the equal total period. And total periods of time is just anything. It could be the number period in quarterly for 3 years, or the number periods in monthly in 3 years, which is 3 times 12 months, which is 3 times 12, 36 periods. So that's why they give you a general form for you to substitute according to the situation in the data given. Okay, so you write this down, you frame it, right? And keep in mind this formula, because this is how you're going to use it on the time. Write out compounded semi-annually, R divided by 2, T times 2, write it down. This I already posted in our website in the, I think in the 7 week or 8 weeks. I think in the 8 weeks when we're talking about compounded. And make sure you read my instruction when you open the page, the weekly activities. Make sure you read on the top, what is the instruction for that week? What do I expect you to do, right? Make sure you read the instruction. If I give you the assignment, you have to read my instruction on the assignment. So in each assignment, I told you that you only can do this assignment if you have done first step, watch the number 1 video. Second step, watch the number 2 video. Third step, read the document from below, and you follow the instruction. I state the instruction very clear. Only because you don't read it, so you miss it. And sometimes you might read it, but then you're not doing it right at the moment. You walk away, then of course you will forget. And then you come back, you said, I already read that. I don't need to read it anymore. But actually, anytime if you come back, you should read the instruction again, because you will forget for sure. I would forget too, right? So that's why anytime you do it, you have to reread it again, and you have to start from at the beginning again. If you do it in halfway and you come back, then you have to restart everything at the beginning, so that you have the continuous sequence of instruction and make you understand more and more. So I'm going to give you a next time video, which is I will work on the problem. This video, I just want to give you comments and give you my opinion in how the way you do, and show you the important future value, explain what does that mean, and explain the term semi-annually, quarterly, monthly, daily. This stuff you need to keep in your mind when you're dealing with compound interest. So I'm going to end the video here, and I will give you another video for solving the question.